That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about The Tank, the sophomore film directed by Scott Walker, which is being released courtesy of Wellgo USA Entertainment.
Oh.
That's the name.
Sorry.
We've reviewed other films of that distributor at points. April 21st, 2023.
Scott's first film?
Second, sophomore.
No, what's his first film?
Oh, The Frozen Ground, which it was a decade ago in 2013, which I remember quite liking. Starring John Cusack and Nicolas Cage. Vanessa Hudgens gives quite a good performance as a little prostitute. And 50 Cent as a pimp. And despite what that cast might say, if I had to come up with a list of the best of Nick Cage's B-sides, that film would be on them. So I was excited to see this initially. It's from New Zealand.
I didn't care for this one.
I didn't either. I think I was a little shocked at how derivative it is because it feels like the first outline of a story and required maybe some sprinkling in of actual other things happening, so it didn't seem so derivative.
The plot is 1978, a youngish married couple played by
Matt Whelan and Luciane Buchanan.
who I did like.
Yeah, they're fine.
They have a child, a daughter who appears to be like 9 years old. They run a pet store
In Oakland.
And it's important to note that they're having financial difficulties. They get home one day from work and they receive a guest who says he's an associate of their family lawyer. And he proceeds to tell them that while he was rummaging through, and this is the husband's family lawyer.
Ben.
That while he was rummaging through Ben's family lawyer's stuff, he came across a deed to a property Ben's mother owned.
It was filed incorrectly.
And we need to talk in more detail about this, but the way Ben reacts to this news is not what I thought made sense, because considering that they're having financial problems, I would assume that he'd be happy about this unknown windfall.
That, and then we learned that the mother was in and out of psychiatric institutions, so would you be that surprised if there were things you didn't know?
But he has kind of an attitude about it, like, how come no one told me about this? But anyway, they take it, and then they cut to them traveling to the Pacific Northwest, where this property is. The problem is the opening of the film is 1946.
May 2nd, 1946, which is an exact date that apparently is important because we find the mother's diary that's dated.
And we see, this is the opening of the film, that Ben's father falls into like a tank, like a well outside of the family home, which is where they're headed to now. So we can presume that based on the title of the film and the opening scene, there's something in that tank. Mm-hmm. And there is.
Yep.
So they get to the house, weird things start happening, and we find out that there are these creatures living underground in the water.
Ostensibly because this tank, which I've never quite seen anything like that, and I don't know if that's specific to this area, that's kind of this water reservoir. And inside of that, which even Ben exclaims is weird, is there's a weird subterranean tunnel going.
It was unclear to me how that worked, but yeah, it seemed kind of odd.
The dimensions are also a little unclear.
There are these creatures that you said they look like.
I think they look like the creatures in A Quiet Place.
I didn't recall that reference, so I said they look like if you mix a capybara with a xenomorph.
Which is also apt.
But they look like men in costumes.
I think that I didn't mind how the kind of practical effects of the creatures looked.
No, I do think that, so to get through the story, we see that there are these creatures, not one, not two, but many.
Yeah, lots of them. Mm-hmm.
And the couple and their kid barely make it out alive, the end.
Mm-hmm. Blow up part of the house, kind of. There's one casualty with a gossipy-ass realtor.
We have to go see Evil Dead Rise, so let me finish. When Ben gets the news from that associate of the family lawyer, first of all, they're sitting in this raggedy-ass apartment. They're having financial trouble. I was surprised to hear that your family has like a lawyer. And then when the man tells him that, do you know how fast I would have snatched that deed? Oh. I would not sit there and argue about, well, how come no one told me about this? Mm-hmm. Then when they get to the house, it was laughable to me because the cliche is like white folks love to get into some trouble. What's the first thing he does? when they get to that damn house, he wants to jump in that tank.
Oh, he sure does. He gets right down in there and then finds this slimy, weird creature thing. And her veterinarian skills are only utilized at this one point where she deduces that it's amphibious and subterranean.
I didn't mention that the wife is in veterinary medicine.
And also not white. They're an interracial couple, which also is a dimension of this story that isn't kind of addressed at all, which could have been in interesting ways.
Yeah. So I think the husband and wife, those actors and their performances, I thought were good.
They're fine. I also don't get how they have this. They're bankrupt basically, but they have this busy ass pet store.
The pet store is busy.
It's chaotic in the beginning.
And who's minding the pet store as they go off to the Pacific Northwest?
Right, they're just both gone for an indeterminate amount of time. Meanwhile, they have puppies peeing everywhere back home. Like, who's taking care of all that shit?
Okay. The little girl playing, child actors are hit or miss for me, and I thought she was kind of a miss. But then another character is the realtor who pops up once they get to this family house. And that lady, I mean, bless her heart, that dialogue and...
She is tasked with getting through an impossible amount of exposition, which, again, that could have been... puttered about in all kinds of more interesting ways.
Well, let's save it for what you thought the better story would be.
But she gets in there and she's like, didn't you know about the curse on your house? Oh, sorry to scare you.
And then she recounts the curse in a way that makes it seem like, I was unclear if she read up on the curse or everyone knows about this curse, but you wouldn't be able to tell based on her performance.
Based on that, I could see how that monologue was in the screenplay. There's just this big chunk of dialogue that she's got to get through about this earthquake that happened and kind of what created the Meg in that Jason Statham movie of these implied these creatures are released from this rift in the Earth's crust.
Speaking of that, this story makes me think that movie I want to see, The Black Demon or the Black Shark.
Black Demon?
The Black Demon.
It's a demon.
It's going to be something like this, I bet. But anyway, then she's like, oh, well, I got a buyer for you. Here's the contract or the offer. And the reaction from the married couple is like, holy moly, this is a lot of money.
It is, but if you notice, the realtor's like, I could get you more. And the husband goes, no. And the wife says, yes.
Like, are you dumb?
Ben is a real dumb character.
I also thought the film looked fine to me up until the realtor comes. I don't know if it was green screen at that point where we're looking at because the property they own, we're told is like, contains miles and miles of the coast. So they have this like premium real estate, which makes it odd that they've been, like, it's been on the market, I guess, for 30 years. Like, that home's been abandoned.
We need to revisit that point.
And no one has thought to, like, try to obtain it. But anyway, the cherry on top of this realtor's performance is Ben says, do you want me to drive you back to your car? And she's like, no, I'll walk. And it's still daylight out when she's like, ta-ta. And when she finally gets to her car, we see her hiking.
It is dead-ass night.
Like the dead of night. And of course she gets hemmed up by these monsters.
But not only that, she has this car just parked out in this trail, and the windows are down.
The window is down.
I understand her not knowing about the deadly creatures, but there are other animals in the woods that crawl into cars. The windows are plain.
That entire sequence was silly.
It's so stupid.
Okay, what did you think about the score? Because I didn't think it matched, like, most of the time what was happening in the movie.
It was working overtime to make it seem
Yes.
like things were happening, which is kind of a rookie error, and I was sad to see that happen. Also, I agree that it didn't look as good as it could have, considering they're really just alone out in the woods, and you don't need much to be really creepy. Ironically, this was shot by Aaron Morton, who was the director of photography on Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead remake in 2013.
Oh. Okay, what's the wife's name?
Jules.
So while Ben is out trying to figure things out and destroy creatures, I don't know, Jules is up in the house rummaging through things and finds Ben's mom's diary. And the highlight of the diary is the end of the diary.
Well, she finds it in parts.
Right. It's spread out throughout the house.
Of course.
But when she finally tells Ben, like, I know what happened, because Ben, for his entire life, believed that his dad and sister drowned on the property. But that's not true. And the mom reveals it in the diary that these creatures took the dad and the sister, but she was too afraid to say anything because they would have for sure thought she was crazy. So the wife relays that to Ben.
And she was, because she could have sold the damn property to somebody else.
She really was crazy. But the final line in her diary is, whoever finds this forgive me. And then in big capital letters with an exclamation point says run.
Starring Sarah Polley. Yeah, I feel like there's that's in the writing. The writing. You could, I see what they're trying to do there, but something else creepy could have been like, if you see this, please don't stay in this house or something.
In every movie like this, there's always the moment where it's like they call the police come, and then the police are...
They die immediately.
They die immediately, and that happens in this movie.
Mm-hmm. There are too many creatures. There are too many creatures in this area where nobody would be, that they're all none the wiser that these things are existing there. What are they eating? When are they crawling out?
Also, if a realtor who has never met you is telling you that, oh, I have an offer for this property that makes you shit your pants, how is it that no one's ever like been on here? And if there are so many creatures, how did no one discover them?
How are there no squatters? I think there are so many more interesting ways to have told this, basic but effective.
We'll get to your better story. I want to hear it. But the moment when, because Ben does get hurt pretty badly, so now his wife is trying to figure out like how can she get them out. And at a point, she and her daughter hop in the car, like they are fully going to leave the husband. Mm-hmm. And then they realize they don't have the car keys, so they have to go back and get them from him. And then she drags him to the car. So is she going to leave him there?
I think so. And then they're trying to emulate Sigourney Weaver and Aliens at this point.
That's my final note. Go ahead.
She turns around and she shoots one of the creatures in the car and says, "Get out of my car."
But with that affect. Like flat and slow. Get out of my car.
Like you can't even get out of my effing car. Like,
but see, speaking of flat and slow, the reason I brought up that they look like men in suits is I'm assuming there wasn't the budget for much special effects. So we never see the creatures be like fast and aggressive. And it seems like they're not that difficult to get away from. They don't move quickly. They kind of just stand there and glare at you like a cat.
It seems like they're more dangerous in water.
But then when she is attacked by two of them in the water, she kills both of them quite easily.
She does.
With a pitchfork.
Again, another nod to Aliens where the kid gets dragged down into the tank and she has to go get her ass. And that little girl doesn't want to leave. That little girl, she's like, I can't do it. Oh, I would have snapped. You're staying then. I came down here and endangered myself.
Well, people are going to say a parent can't leave their kid, but I would have snatched your ass up. Like, I don't care what you want to do. We're leaving.
She's like having a reasonable discussion with her about how she needs to scoot on up.
I would have snatched that ponytail and ran out the door. But I feel like I'm shitting on this movie. It's just like, it feels like a lot of things we've seen and there's nothing about it that pops. But I think you had a better idea for what the story could have been.
The title gives it away, and we don't need that scene in 1946 to show that something that it totally drains it of any tension.
Yes.
It should have been kind of like Barbarian, really, where we are misled into thinking this is another type of movie. I think that's where I meant like the interracial couple component could have been they're late 70s, they're having financial issues, maybe he's not sure he wants to have a kid, they find out they have this property, and he's like, I got to check it out because you got to mind the store. And goes up there and disappears and she can't find him. And then she has to go find him thinking maybe he ran away. Then there's all kinds of weird clues like dead bodies and weird things happening on this property. And then the townspeople can say like, we don't like to go over there, we're scared. And then boom, we have a monster movie.
Yeah, I like that idea because I agree. Like we've mentioned already, having it be called The Tank and in the opening film is the dad who we think drowns. We see him get dragged into the tank. So as the audience, we already know that whatever story he thinks about his family, this house, it's not true. It just like released all the tension.
Who knows? It's the Tank. It sounds like, who's that man you used to watch on social media? Tank something.
Oh, Tank Sinatra?
Oh my God. I'm not sure if The Tank was the original title of this, but I don't know. These distributors need to really get away from just giving us the most stupid, banal titles ever.
Also, like, because there was no tension except, oh, what are these creatures, right? Because you already mentioned she finds like a baby version of it. So it's like, well, that kind of killed it. Like, so is it going to be like bigger than a fish or I don't know. And then when you see it, it's just like, oh, it's just a big, it doesn't even look that scary.
But there's a way to make that fun. It's like, oh, those are fun moments in the movie. Like the first Joe Dante's Piranha.
Oh, I was going to say Piranha, actually.
There are ways to make that interesting and fun and just kind of like, it can be a fun B-grade creature feature. It's just that we take so long examining this house. Like, yeah, we already know something's there, and they kind of almost try to hint that it's supernatural at first. It's like, don't even do that. Stop that. It's just be good. Can you just be well written? It reminded me of that other terrible Neil Marshall movie, The Lair, from last year, where they find that Russian bunker and there's that creature in there.
The opening of that film it was promising
And again, until people...
until people started talking. What would you give this movie?
Mr. Walker, I wanted to like this, but 2 out of 5.
I would give it 2 out of 5. Hit the thanks button. Listen to our podcast. Bye.